Hello and welcome to our show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. So, you know that pain, the stress, and the struggle that divorcing men and women go through? Well, there is a way to find peace, keep your sanity, and help your attorney, saving you thousands of dollars through the process. Hello, my name is Tina Huggins. I'm your divorce coach specialist, divorce planning specialist, restorative family mediator, and conflictual co-parenting coach. Today, my guest speaker is Rosalind Sedacca. Rosalind is also a CDC certified divorce coach, just as I am, only Rosalind focuses on co-parenting. Rosalind is the founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network. Rosalind is located in West Palm Beach, Florida, but works with parents all over the world. She helps the parents deal with issues and frustrations that cause the conflict in a family. She helps keep that conflict out of the family and away from the children. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here, Rosalind.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, as our viewers might hear, my voice is kind of like half disappeared today, so I'm real raspy. I spent a very long weekend in very high energy screaming and everything. So I apologize for my voice right off the bat. So Rosalind, just before we came on, I told you that I wanted to kind of talk about your child-centered divorce network. I want for you to kind of explain to me what that is and how you use that or how it helps people.
Well, thank you. So the Child-Centered Divorce Network specializes in divorces with children. Obviously, if you're not a parent and you get a divorce, no matter how terrible the divorce experience is, it ends relatively short period of time and you move on in your life. You never have to see that other person again if you don't want to. But when you're a parent, it's totally different. And in most cases, you're co-parenting on some level for the rest of your life. And you want to make sure that that situation is not only bearable for you, but something that isn't negatively affecting your children, especially since it's the rest of their lives. And so that's why I created the Child-Centered Divorce Network. And I'll give you a short story to explain how that happened, because it was not my career at all. I had a divorce when my son was 11 years old, and this goes back into the 90s. There wasn't the kind of support and information available at that time that there is now. And so my ex and I had to figure out the co-parenting after the divorce. And we really worked hard, because one thing I could say is that despite the differences we had, he was a good father, and I knew he loved his son as much as I loved our son. And so we worked it out. And one day, when my son was a grown young adult in his 20s, he came to me one day, literally out of the blue, and he said, "You know, Ma, you and Daddy really did a good job with the divorce, and I want to thank you, because most of my friends whose parents divorced either hate their parents or are very angry at them, and I think you two really did a great job." And I let out such a sigh of relief, because, you know, you hold on to a lot of guilt and insecurity about, did I mess my child up through this divorce experience? And so it was a wonderful experience to have that recognition from him, that affirmation from him. And it also made me realize that I learned so much during the course of raising him post-divorce, what to do and what not to do, and how to deal with conflict and all the things that most people are challenged by. So I decided to create the Child-Centered Divorce Network, became a certified divorce and co-parenting coach. And because my original background was in writing, I ended up writing several books, ebooks, and courses and programs to help parents, even if they couldn't afford one-on-one coaching, to get the support systems that they need and the strategies they need to do divorce right. And that's what a Child-Centered Divorce Network is all about, helping parents avoid the mistakes and do it in a way where your children will thank you when they're grown adults for the way you handled your divorce. What better can you ask for?
Yes, definitely. And I would love it if my clients could actually co-parent like you did. Most of my clients are coming in from an abused situation. And so they're soon to be ex or ex, because a lot of them come in after the divorce, and need help because they're going back to court and back to court. And so that would be my hope for everybody to be able to co-parent like you did. So in the case with the clients that I end up working, I'm helping them learn to parallel parent. So do you deal with much parallel parenting?
Well, I certainly have, and I apply as much of what I teach everyone to those cases too, because we have to remember, and this is such a pivotal point, the only one person we could change in life is ourselves. And
Right.
so much of our life we spend trying to change, fix, and improve other people. And many of us, especially women, during their marriage spent a lot of time knocking themselves out trying to change the husbands until finally the divorce was inevitable. Some people obviously are never going to change, but if they are, it has to come from within, and we have to be aware of that. So it means even in situations like your clients have, that you have to say, what can I do differently, and break the patterns. If we continue doing the same thing we've been doing, we're going to get the same results inevitably, the same frustration, the same anxiety, the same hurt and pain. And so we have to shift our energy and behave differently and use different strategies. And that doesn't change the other person, but it gives you a space to find new ways to behave or not behave, new ways to interact or not interact, new ways to address the challenge in the situation from a fresh perspective, because banging our heads against the wall with the same behavior is so futile and so hurtful for everyone.
Yes, and I think it's so hurtful for the children. You
Oh,
know, I want to go back into the marriage for just a second. This is something that, a lot of my clients will say, I don't think I'm ready to get divorced because, the kids are still young and yada yada yada. And a lot of my clients are dealing with abuse, psychological, if nothing else.
yes.
And I kind of remind them, this is what your son or daughter is experiencing. And so daughters, if their mother is the abuser type person in that relationship, they will learn that that's how they need to treat people. And then the boys in that relationship are going to learn to accept that that's the way of life, or vice versa.
Mhm.
If the father gets physical with the mother, then what do you think those boys are learning? And what do you think your daughter's learning about? She's got to take that to be the woman or the wife.
Yes, one of the essential points that every client needs to understand is that as parents, we are role models. Our children are watching and learning from us. So when a parent says, "Oh, I'll bear it for another 5 or 10 years just for the sake of the kids," they're not really doing the kids any favor, because children raised in a toxic environment, no matter what form of toxicity it is, are not learning what a healthy, loving relationship is. How can we expect them to go out and have healthy relationships in their adult life? So it's very important for parents to be mindful of what we're showing and demonstrating to our children, and let that be a factor in making a decision about whether I should be staying in this marriage, or whether divorce is not only sane for me, but especially sane for my children.
Right. And I know I look back over my marriage and I dealt with psychological stuff, but the best part of that is that we were able to parent. Even while we were together, we parented. In fact, we did better when we were together.
Mhm.
And I waited too long to get out of the relationship, but my kids didn't, well, my youngest didn't experience much of the negative. Now, my oldest, he told me at the time I left, he says, Mom, you should have got out a long time ago. He could see things differently than his younger brother. But here we are all these years later, because I got divorced 22 years ago. All these years later, they tell me, because I'll remark about their respect level. And they said, you and dad did such a great job with us. You taught us respect. And that I stayed in there until my oldest was out of the house and my youngest was already 16. But because we parented together, which is what the co-parenting afterwards can look like,
Yes.
you can do that together and have this, just like your son says, you did such a great job with the divorce.
Yeah. We don't want to scar them because those scars last a lifetime. And it
Mm,
doesn't have to be that way. If someone gets into the hands of someone like you who has all of that experience and insight, and or works with someone like me, a few strategies, a few changes in what you're doing or not doing can make all the difference in avoiding so much of the pain and struggle that we see too often.
hmm hmm And those here we are. Now we're dealing with a mom and dad that are getting divorced. And if we look back into their lives, what did they experience in their household? Was there a divorce? Was it a positive? Was it a negative? Or did their parents stay together and now they're struggling because they don't know how to be the father or the mother or the husband or the wife?
Exactly. This is definitely continues generationally. And that's so sad. Toxic relationships from generation to generation to generation. Children don't even have a chance when that's the reality they're in, unless someone gets the awareness, and that's what it's all about, is getting awareness that something has to change. It could change with me, and I could be the catalyst for making changes in how our family is going to deal with things, deal with tension, deal with stress, deal with conflict that is inevitable in any family dynamic, and do it differently. And get the support so you don't feel that you're all alone, because it's hard to reinvent the wheel all by yourself.
Yes. So let's take a look at the parents staying together and that conflict that's inside that marriage. Now, I know you were intelligent enough to leave your relationship. I really stayed a little bit too long, but there are some people that stay way too long and the kids are damaged. And, I look back over lots of my clients and friends and people in my life, and I can see so many that that damaged the kids because they stayed in that. So can you kind of highlight what you've learned and seen?
Yeah, well, I just want to let you know that I spent about 5 years postponing that divorce. I too was afraid. I didn't want to scar my child, and so I stayed and stayed and stayed. And things just, of course, get worse. And I ended up doing a lot of therapy, going to workshops and retreats and all kinds of self-help things until I got the courage. It took years to get the courage to finally know that I was making the right decision in getting out. And I'm glad I did at the time I did, but I could have done it years earlier. So what you're talking about is so common. We wait, we put it off. It's partially fear, and a lot of it is insecurity that I'm making a mistake. But the children are paying the price when we stay too long. So
Mm,
we have to remember that children need two things when they're growing up. They need to be able to love both parents, and they need to be able to be loved by both parents. So when a divorce comes along, it's very common that one parent is going to feel justified, one or both parents feel justified in saying that I know better, I'm a better parent, I'm going to keep my child from the influence of my ex. And yes, there are toxic cases when we really do have to keep that other parent away from the children, but not in the majority of cases. In most cases, that's not the case. And it's just personality differences and mistakes that both parents made during the marriage. But the children should not be denied the ability to say, I love both of my parents and want to be with both of my parents. I want to call up mom or dad when they're with the other parent and spend some time on the phone with them. And the worst thing we could experience is what's called parental alienation, when one parent feels justified in alienating the children from that other parent so that the other parent can show their love and affection for the children. Children are scarred by that, and a lot of parents don't understand that for years and years, and decades go by when the children are alienated from both parents. So it can get very severe unless someone steps in to remind these parents, you have to look at these experiences from your child's perspective. Put yourself in their shoes, whether they're 6 or 16, and see what's going on with them and how they're experiencing it, what their perspective is, what they're making themselves feel and believe about it, and then work to help them understand that none of this is their fault, and that there are other ways and other choices we have and how we can still be a family, but family in a different form, a post-divorce form where there's less tension and less conflict, and yet everyone still gets their boundaries respected and there's more peace of mind and security.
Yes. And I can tell you, I lived in a family that they should have gotten divorced years and years ago. When and they finally get divorced, now I'm an adult. I was like my oldest son. I was headed out the door, literally to college, to school, and they got divorced. And what happened during the marriage, my mom, they should have never gotten married. And there was no real abuse, but my mom decided that somewhere along the way, and it was before I knew any different, to drink. And that's how she coped with not feeling loved by my dad. But my dad didn't feel loved by my mom because he was a goer and a doer and loved to have fun. And he didn't take my mom with him because she didn't want to go. She had her own excuses, the kids, of this, of that. And so they just were not meant for each other. But what happened after that divorce? Luckily, I was gone, but my poor little sister and my brother, who was 16 at the time, but my little sister it was torture of watching what my dad did to my mom, or my dad's girlfriend did to my mom during that divorcing time frame. And those are the things that you're helping parents prevent or stop if it's going on. So kind of tell us a little bit about how you do that.
Well, again, having the parents really look at their children and put themselves in their children's shoes so they get emotionally and viscerally what's going on for those kids, because no one knows your kids better than you. But sometimes we're so preoccupied with our own drama and our own trauma that we overlook the symptoms and the signs that our kids are not happy, that they're stressed, that they can't handle things well. So we have to be very mindful of what they're saying, what they're doing, and look and watch if their behavior is changing, because you could catch behavior changes early on, not after 5 years of misbehaving and bullying and acting out and being aggressive in school and just not being mindful about it. Then it's too late, and then you have to go into much more dire situations. So we want to remind our children that none of this is their fault and that life can be better for them if we just move on and stop the shaming and the blaming within the family dynamic. And rather than pointing fingers to one another, let's see if we can get along and create some agreements. There are ways of creating agreements, because we need each other, even if in a post-divorce family, even if you're not co-parenting closely together, there are still times when you need each other, and having the support of one another makes a big difference in moving ahead, because no one's going to love and care about your children as much as their other parent in most cases. And if you have a situation like that, then you want to start depending on each other and helping each other rather than being adversaries. I know a lot of your clients, it's not going to work for them, and they have to do parallel parenting where they're not interacting as much in the relationship, but you have to be sharing with your children what you're doing and how you're doing it. And at the same time, be very mindful of the fact that you don't want your children parenting you. I see a lot of people, especially women, who are very hurt during a toxic divorce, and they're weeping, and the kids can see how they're feeling. And a precocious little young daughter at 10 or 12 or 15 years old is coming over and saying, "I'll take care of you, Mom, it's okay." And the son is going to step up, and I'll be the big man in the family, and I'll take care of you, Mom. Well, it's not Mom's place to have children taking care of her. She needs help. She needs support. Reach out for that help, but not from your children, because once your children start parenting you, they've lost their childhood innocence. They are no longer children. They are little adults trying to cope in a world that they know nothing about. They can't possibly understand the complexity of your relationship dynamic that created that divorce. And yet they're stepping up and trying to fix it, trying to heal it, trying to help you. So we as parents have to be mature enough to notice these things early on and say, I'm okay, and I'm getting help from friends, or going to see a coach. I don't need you to be taking care of me. It's okay. Remind the children that their place is to enjoy their childhood. Despite divorce, they deserve to have a childhood. They deserve to play and do things with their friends and have a life, and not be the child who becomes the little adult because their parents divorced. Those are the consequences that don't have to happen, that we see too often. And from parents who are oblivious of what's happening, they just are not aware of that, and the confusion that their behavior takes when they're not being mindful and not being aware. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, definitely. It reminds me of what took place back in my divorce time. And I just so wish that I could go back to that time, because I did everything wrong. Back then there was no coaches that could help. There was nobody trained like we are. And I can tell you, for those people of you watching, the training that Rosalind and I have gone through the CDC is in depth and very, very deep work. I mean, it took us, it like took time out of our weeks. Every week we had to spend hours and hours studying and reading for this. It wasn't just something that you just kind of just off the cuff do. We had to understand divorce, and then to get co-parenting certified, we had to understand what co-parenting was. So it's an in-depth training that we go through. But if I go back to my divorce, I did everything wrong. But the most important thing that I didn't do right, that I wish I could change, this is the one major thing, is that I could only feel my own pain. I hurt so bad. I did not think enough about my children, and I almost took my life. I attempted it, and God said no. And had that happened, I would have taken my children's mother away.
Yes.
I mean, I would have murdered their mother.
It's wonderful that your clients are getting someone like you who've had that experience and candid enough to share that experience with people and them, because it makes such a difference. Your understanding now of what a difference that could have made for your children if that wasn't the case. So many parents, that is the worst thing that we see, is that they're so engulfed in their own pain that the kids fall through the cracks, not intentionally, but inadvertently. The kids fall through the cracks because they're not aware of how much it hurts the children. And children innately will blame themselves when things are going wrong in the family. It's never the child's fault. Even if you're fighting about the children, it's never their fault. It's the adults in the relationship who created this dynamic, the reason you're getting a divorce. But children will blame themselves, and they'll make it their responsibility to try to fix it. They're fixing something that's unfixable for a child. It's impossible for a child to do anything about it. They don't understand that. So they're set up for unnecessary hurt and grief and failure, because they're not going to put their parents together again, which a lot of children hang on to the hope that they could fix it so that the parents will get back. And the parents are not going to love each other the way they loved each other at one point anymore. and life is going to be different post-divorce than it is when it was years ago. And it's a tough thing to understand. But if we have the mindset to understand that change is part of life, and this is a change in the form of the family, it doesn't mean we're not a family anymore, because your two parents are going to be your two parents long after the divorce. They're still parents. There's still a relationship that can be healthy and fulfilling for everyone in the family. With understanding that there's something positive to look forward to post-divorce. And many children will say, I wish you did it earlier. Thank you for finally getting the divorce, because life was insane. It can be much happier after the divorce. It's just a matter of doing it in a way that the children aren't paying the price.
Yes. Yes. And that brings me to the point of communication. One, we should never talk about the other parent negatively in front of the child. I mean, I think most of us know that. Some of us don't pay attention to that. Um, but you need to communicate. And so I have parents ask me often, when do we tell the kids? How do we tell the kids? What do I do when the kids ask this? And I always tell my clients, I'm like, you've got to communicate this to the kids. And if they're young, of course, you're going to talk in age appropriate manner.
Right.
Explain things, and there's some wonderful books out there. I mean, if you're a parent who reads to your kids, those are the perfect books to buy during this difficult time, because one, you're reading to them, you're spending that time with them, and the book is written by somebody else, so they get to hear the stories. So that's one of the things. I've got clients now that have got adult children, and they're preparing to leave the home, and they don't know what to say to their adult children. They weren't going to say anything. I'm like, whoa, you can't, just because they're adults and they're on their own does not mean that this will not affect them. So
Right.
how often do you deal with divorcing parents that have adult children?
It's not the highest percentage, but I certainly do. And so much of it is still the same information, even though the age dynamic is different, because everyone inside is feeling insecure and unsure and uncomfortable, and everyone has boundaries, and everyone gets triggered by everyone else's behavior. So the deepest components are all still there. And you're right, the communication has to be honest and candid, looking in your child's eyes and saying, I made some mistakes and I wish I could have done it differently, and I apologize for that, is one thing that every parent could do. For anything where you realize now, or you have an insight now that you maybe made a mistake in saying what you said or doing what you did. And it gives children permission to realize that they can apologize too. When they see a parent do it, they know that there's nothing unhealthy about saying, I'm sorry, I wish I knew better when I made that decision, but things are going to change now. So take responsibility, own up to what you can as a parent, and allow your kids to allow yourself to apologize to your kids, and allow them to hear that and learn that they can apologize for behavior too. That's one gift you can give them that will last them a lifetime. And being as candid as you can, but with children who are under the 20s, you don't want to be sharing adult information with them, as tempting as it may be. I had a client where the wife had an affair, and dad he just wanted the kids to know this divorce was not his fault. She did it, and it's her fault. And they had kids who were like 8 and 10 or 12 years old. And I had to spend a lot of time with this dad, because I understood his feelings. He didn't want the kids to think that he had any part in making this decision. And yet at the same time, telling your kids this is what your mother did is not something that they're going to understand, even if they were older teens. Is this what you want to put on your children? And slowly he came to realize that that's not what he wants his kids to be interacting with their mother about. It's something that when they're grown adults, you may want to share with them at some point, but it isn't appropriate for kids to know adult information of any kind, because it can't change anything, but it'll immediately invade their childhood experience, and they can't forget it and unlearn it. And then they're no longer children. They're little adults with adult information in their heads that should be there. So this dad, to his credit, got that and got that point. He understood that he was not going to tell his kids about that, and they were able to have a child-centered divorce. I have keys of information that you do want to share with your kids, because what the children need to understand when a divorce is happening, it has to do with their safety and security, that it's not the end of the world, that things are going to be better. And those are the kind of messages. And the more both parents are together in alignment with the same message, the easier it is for children of any age to grasp it and understand it. It's when you're in conflict about it, when you're pointing the finger, when you're calling each other names, when you're blaming each other for the divorce, that's when the kids are forced to take sides, even if it's not physically, mentally and emotionally they're taking sides. We don't want to do that to our kids, because kids innately love both parents. So you don't want to be communicating about sides, who's a better parent. You want to be communicating about the fact that we both made this decision, and we're both here for you, and we're both going to still be your parents, and we're going to get through this together as a family, all of us together, and you'll see things are going to be better, because that's the way we're planning it. When kids hear something, a message like that from both parents, they can accept a lot of shifts and changes and differences in the family dynamic. If the message is coming from both parents, it makes all the difference in the world. So when you have parents who can't do that, and I know you're dealing with much higher conflict parents, those kids are paying a much higher price, because they're not getting at least the piece of that one little smidgen of information where both parents can deliver it together and give them some peace of mind, because it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And so the one thing that I would want our viewers to understand, the clients that I deal with that are coming in from such a high conflict and there's abuse usually, hopefully it's not with the children. And if there is, then we need to figure out a way to get the children away from that parent. That's when it's unsafe. But the reality is that these parents, the child needs both of them. And if you are the abused parent in that, psychologically, financially, whatever that might look like, and the other parent has been a good parent and can continue to be a good parent without abuse to the children, then you need to just find a way to communicate with your children. And so taking this course and information away that a Rosalind has to offer, even if it's just you that's doing this, that is going to be a lot of help for you to help the children, because just one of you being there and communicating, and they can come and talk about the other, in we'll say that dad is the abuser in this situation, and the child comes back and says, daddy's still talking about you, mommy. And mom can sit down and say, that's okay, hun. I know that it hurts you when dad talks about me, and you can tell dad, but dad is still angry with me. He still is being angry. And so when people are angry, they say mean things about people. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's how dad feels right now. Dad just needs to go through this. And just so that I'm here, and I'm so glad that you came to me with this information.
Yes, that's such a wonderful thing for you to be sharing with the parents, and for the parents to understand. It makes all the difference in the world in how they're going to communicate with the children. And that's what children need. Children need to feel secure. The number one thing, they need to feel some sense of peace and security and safety when they're going through this life-altering experience that they have no idea what the future is going to be like for them. It's scary for everyone, but for innocent children, it's profoundly frightening. And the more that they can be reassured by one or both parents, hopefully, makes all the difference in the world.
Yes. And so you touched on how this father wanted to tell his kids that his wife cheated. You know, when there's a parent that, and I try to get my clients when they're in that mindset, I've got to let the child know. It's like, one, that's going to hurt the child. But in the case of cheating specifically, and one parent saying, I've got to, it hurt them. Yes, there was a betrayal there. But it usually, when I hear my clients so angry at like that, we stop and we start digging and we find a root that might have been the cause of whatever the situation is.
Or
It takes two. So if one person cheats, there's usually a reason, subconsciously, in most cases, even. But we need to find our root and we need to start figuring out how to get that pulled out of the ground so that the tree can start to heal.
I agree with you, Tina. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just something that, I have to stop my clients when they're so intent. Like I had one mother several years ago who came in and said, my kid is this, that, and the other, and has this medication, has to do this. So I have to have 90% custody of this kid. And so I worked really hard with her to see that, dad is so important and that dad can learn to take care of these are kind of minor things. The dad can learn how to do this. Well, she pushed so hard that she was right. She was right. She finally let me go because she felt I was helping her try to see a light she didn't want to see.
Right.
Well, they ended up in court and dad got 50% custody. And dad was willing to take 25%
Hmm.
when they went to court and she wouldn't give him even that much,
Yeah,
then he got 50%. That's because we don't look outside of the box. We can't see the possibilities.
that's right. And I had a case that contentious where dad had, not only did he have an affair, but he had an affair with her during her second pregnancy. So she was pregnant all the while. So this mom was so angry and so bitter and so hateful, understandable. Anyone could understand her situation, that she just couldn't do anything connected to child-centered divorce, because when I asked the question, do you love your children more than you may hate your ex? She couldn't say yes. She couldn't say yes, I love them more, because the resentment about him was more important. So ultimately she left me for the same reason that your client left you, because she didn't like what she was hearing from me, and moved
Yep.
on. And these were young children, 3, 5-year-old children.
Mm,
So you could get away with a lot when the kids are that young, and you could do whatever you want with the kids and they don't know any different. So fortunately, I knew people who knew this family, and a few years later, she's at a big family gathering with where dad was there too, and um, one of her kids comes up to her and says, "Mommy, why are you so always so mean when Daddy's around?" And started saying things, asking her questions about the decisions she was making as a mother. And this is like the girl's like 7 or something at this point. And that was the point when she realized that her kids were being impacted by her decisions. It wasn't until that, when the child confronted her directly, that she realized from the child's perspective, she's just a mean mommy and abusing dad. And so she had to let go and lighten up on the rules of never smiling and never being nice to dad, even no matter what's going on in the family dynamic. So she ultimately learned the lesson, but the hard way. And the children, of course, were paying the price. And that's what happens.
mm-hmm, mm. And yeah, and they pay the price, not just at the moment, for the rest of their life. And
Yes.
so, yeah. So as we start to wind this down, um, so I mean, I want the viewers, all your contact information is going to be below in the show notes, but how can the viewers get a hold of you?
Well, it's very simple, because everything I have and do is at childcentereddivorce.com. And right on the homepage, I have a free ebook on post-divorce parenting, success strategies for getting it right. So if you just go to the top of the homepage and put your email address in, you could get that for an instant download. And then I have several books and courses and programs, and I do one-on-one coaching, of course, around the world. But for anyone who prefers to do it in a course or program, I have those as well. And I have my signature book is How Do I Tell the Kids About the Divorce? I have a very unusual approach to breaking the divorce news by creating a family storybook with family pictures and text that I write that the parents will tweak and customize for the family. And this storybook is something that the kids can relate to because it's a story about them and their family with their names in it. And some kids will bring it from home to home, back and forth, and add in information to it. It's been a very successful strategy. I also have an 8-hour anger management for co-parents program that is useful when it's court mandated or voluntarily taken for someone who knows they have anger issues and knows that it's impacting not only their life, but their innocent children's lives.
And I remember you talking about that book, and I was thinking that that book has got to be just a great idea for parents just because it's about the kid's story.
It
Yeah.
works very well.
So very good. So for our viewers that don't know, I'm a certified divorce coach, just as Rosalind is. We're both certified by the same school, the CDC, a very in-depth divorce coach training school. And this means that I understand the complexities of divorce. I actually have been in an abusive relationship. I watched my father go through an abusive relationship where he was almost murdered. And then I watched my late husband being tortured by his wife. So not only do I know it from the textbook side, I know it from the living through it side. So when I say I understand divorce, I understand divorce. Rosalind herself has been through a divorce. She understands. She is a great co-parenter, as her 20-year-old son told her. You can reach me through my email at coachtinalyn@gmail.com. That's CoachTinaLynn@gmail.com. My website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. You can find me on social media. Also, Facebook is under Tina Lynn Huggins. That's Huggins. LinkedIn under Tina Huggins. On Instagram under Divorce Coach Tina Lynn. And on TikTok under Divorce Tina. So, Rosalind, can you give our viewers a last minute little bit of advice?
So be mindful of how your children are feeling because they don't know how to express it and say it, but they act out in ways that show you how they're feeling. If your children are sad or depressed, if they're having problems in school, if they're bullying or acting out in any kind of behavior ways, that means something is going on that they can't express and explain to you, but it needs attention because the sooner you put a light on it and bring the problems to light, the sooner you can ease out of those situations and give the kids the love and attention they want and need. They need you, they love you, and they need to feel supported and not having to figure out the challenges in life. It isn't fair for them, even if they're older teens. It just isn't fair to do that to our children. So be mindful, and if it's something serious, then reach out immediately to a therapist, a coach, someone who has experience dealing with these things so that you could get it handled. Anything can be handled if you approach it with love and care and attention. And that's a gift that you're giving your children and a gift that they certainly deserve.
Yes. And so my last bit of advice is very similar to hear what Rosalind is saying, but when you are dealing with heading into co-parenting situations, talking to your children about divorce, and if you are the parent who has this anger and this frustration, especially towards your ex, then reach out, go to Rosalind's to her website and look at the material that she's got. If you want to take that course on managing your anger, please do that because that is going to give you some insights that you may not have ever gotten on your own. And the book that she has that we talked about where you get to put the pictures in and you get to tell your child's story. It's their story. They get to add to that story. that is a huge resource to help you communicate with your children and give them an important place in your family. So reach out. The main thing is don't do this alone. This is not something that you can do alone. I know I tried. It doesn't work going alone. Reach out. Get the help that you need.
I agree.
And so, as we close here, I just want to remind everybody, as I talked about my attempted suicide, when we get into a dangerous place in our minds, we get that suicidal ideation. And that is the moment that we need to reach out the most. So I ask you to reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. The number's simple, 988-988. Reach out, just talk to somebody at this very moment when you're going through this. Let them talk you back off that ledge. Your children need you, your family needs you. Also, if you are in a situation where you need the police there now, if you're getting hit on, if your children are getting hit on, call the police, 911 here in the States. And then if you're in Canada, if you're in the Netherlands, it's 999. And if you're in the UK, it's 112. Get the police there, press charges. Those charges are your key out of an abusive relationship. Don't drop the charges. Most often, the abuse that comes after drop charges is way worse than the situation that happens before you put charges on. So please get somebody there and get your key, get to safety. Also, if you or somebody you know is experiencing abuse, either now or is experiencing it over a long period of time, please call the domestic violence hotline at 800-799-7233. That's 800-799-7233. Then I also ask that you please like, comment, and share this information so it can help others. So thank you so much, Rosalind, for coming on and being a guest and telling everybody about your products and your service.
And thank you for inviting me. I love talking with you.
Thank you so much. And I will let you go.